They said the execution would be quick. They lied. The crowd in the alien amphitheater swelled like a storm, rows of stone rising into the sky, packed with beings of 1,000 shapes and shades. Their voices were a cacophony, clicks, hisses, guttural hums, yet all carried the same anticipation. At the center of that great ring, under the shadow of a hovering warship, a single figure stood bound, an American soldier, wrapped head to toe in a ghillie suit tattered from capture. The ropes cut into his wrists. His knees ached from being forced to kneel, but his eyes, hidden behind the camouflage netting, burned with something the galaxy had never learned to fear until now. Human defiance. Elias Kane, last of his squad, survivor of 3 planetary sieges. To the Vathrian overlords, he was no more than a relic of a stubborn species that refused to stay conquered. To the watching galaxy, he was about to be a spectacle, an example of what happens when humanity resists. Smile for the broadcast, soldier, hissed the warden, towering over him in polished obsidian armor. His voice was like gravel sliding over glass, amplified to echo through the arena and across every tuned-in transmission hub in the sector. This is what becomes of Earth's pride. Bound, broken, forgotten. Elias tilted his head, as though considering the words. Then he muttered through cracked lips, just loud enough to be caught by the translator drones. "You talk too much." The warden sneered, taken aback by the insolence. The audience hissed in disapproval, though some alien dignitaries leaned closer, intrigued. Humans had a way of spitting in the face of doom that unsettled even the most battle-hardened conquerors. Elias felt that spark ripple through the silence, a reminder that he was not here merely to die. He was here to leave a mark. The broadcast cameras circled him like carrion birds, beams of cold blue light tracing every bruise, every rope burn. Elias scanned the alien faces, and for an instant, he thought of home. The smell of rain in Virginia woods, the hiss of microwave burritos in his barracks, the absurd debates over whether cats understood sarcasm. A lump rose in his throat, but he buried it. Nostalgia would not save him now. Only grit would. The ceremony began with pomp meant to humiliate. Alien banners unfurled. Trumpets of bone and steel shrieked a victory march. The warden raised a curved blade, ceremonial, cruel, meant for spectacle rather than mercy. Let the galaxy see. Humanity's resistance ends tonight. Elias knew better. Resistance never ended. It adapted, multiplied, and, when pressed to the wall, struck back harder than anyone could imagine. His mind raced, searching for openings. Rope too tight for escape. Guards posted at every angle. No weapon within reach. And yet, even trapped in that pit of stone, his smirk widened beneath the ghillie hood. Because while the alien saw a prisoner, he remembered the one thing they always underestimated: time. The blade lifted. Cheers shook the arena. The amphitheater itself seemed to tremble, stones vibrating with the collective anticipation of millions watching across the stars. The warden's voice boomed again. Remember these final moments of your kind. Elias drew in a breath, steady and slow, then spoke, not to the warden, not to the guards, but to the broadcast itself, to the billions watching behind screens across the galaxy. 8 minutes. His tone was calm, almost conversational, as if mentioning the time until a bus arrived. That's all you've got before this whole place burns. The effect was immediate. The warden froze, blade hovering above his neck. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like wind through tall grass. Translation drones repeated the words in a dozen languages, sparking confusion and disbelief. 8 minutes. The warden snarled. Empty threats. Yet his grip tightened on the blade, hesitation breaking his rhythm. Elias chuckled dryly, his voice cracking but carrying nonetheless. We thought Florida Man was an isolated case. Turns out we're all like that. Unpredictable, stubborn, creative with duct tape. His eyes glittered, daring the cameras to capture every syllable. You think you're putting on a show, but trust me, humanity does live broadcasts better than anyone. Wait and see. The audience did not know whether to laugh, jeer, or quake. The soldier's words hung in the charged air, heavier than the blades still poised above him. Somewhere, a child among the alien dignitaries whispered a question that echoed the thoughts of billions. What happens in 8 minutes? The tension broke when the first explosion tore through the outer ring of the arena. Fire blossomed against the storm-filled sky, distant yet undeniable. The crowd screamed. The warden whipped his head toward the horizon, where plumes of smoke spiraled upward. Another blast followed, closer this time, shaking the amphitheater itself. The broadcast drones buzzed wildly, struggling to frame the chaos. Elias smiled beneath the camo netting, a grim satisfaction flickering across his bruised face. He didn't know the details, whether it was resistance fighters slipping past patrols or orbital strikes triggered by hidden allies, but he knew one thing. Humanity never left its own behind. He had gambled everything on that truth, and the payoff had just begun. The warden roared in fury, swinging the blade downward in a wild arc. But Elias shifted, twisting against the ropes at the last instant. The blade sliced fabric, not flesh, tearing his ghillie suit but leaving him alive. Gasps echoed as he staggered to his feet, still bound but unbroken. Guards surged forward, yet the arena shook again as another explosion cracked the walls, showering the floor in stone fragments. Amid the chaos, Elias shouted, his voice carrying above the panic. You wanted a broadcast? Here's your headline. Humans don't die quiet. The crowd erupted in pandemonium. Aliens scrambled for exits. Drones caught every second, transmitting images of fire, of collapsing walls, of a lone soldier standing tall despite his bonds. The spectacle meant to humiliate had become a symbol of rebellion, and the galaxy watched in rapt attention as the script unraveled before their eyes. The climax came as the alien warship above shifted, massive cannons turning not outward but inward toward the very arena it had come to protect. For a breathless instant, the entire crowd realized what was about to happen. And in that silence, Elias whispered the words that would outlive him. Told you. 8 minutes. The blast never came, at least not yet. But the fear it inspired was enough. The execution had failed. The broadcast, intended to show human weakness, had instead revealed something far more dangerous: human audacity. When the guards finally subdued him, dragging him back to the ground, the warden's blade broken at his side, the damage was already done. Billions had seen. Billions would remember. And somewhere, deep within that fear, the seed of resistance had been planted. Elias lay in the dust, chest heaving, ropes digging into his skin. His body screamed for rest, but his mind sang with triumph. He had given the galaxy a story, and stories were more powerful than armies. And so, dear reader, if you carry anything from this tale, let it be this: even bound in ropes, mocked before empires, or staring in a certain death, a single voice can twist the fate of worlds. Remember, sometimes survival is not the victory. Sometimes the victory is ensuring your defiance cannot be silenced, even if the universe itself leans close to listen. They called it victory, but the air still smelled of blood and ozone. New Arcadia skies were blackened with smoke from the Vathrian warships that had fallen in flaming arcs, their carcasses scattered across fields once meant for wheat and wildflowers. Children played near the wrecks now, scavenging glowing shards of alien alloy as though they were seashells from a ruined beach. Humanity had survived the spectacle, but survival is not the same as safety, and Elias Kane knew it. He limped through the settlement, ribs bound with coarse bandages, ghillie suit torn to rags that clung to him like a second skin. To the people, he was a symbol. To himself, he was a man stitched together with anger and pain, carrying ghosts who whispered every time he closed his eyes. Farmers pressed food into his hands. Children saluted with clumsy earnestness, and strangers whispered his name like a spell. 8 minutes. Yet Elias felt no glory in the worship. He remembered his squad mates burning on the fields, remembered the silence of men who would never laugh at bad chow hall jokes again. At the edge of town, Refugees had built a makeshift clinic out of plasteel sheets and prayer. Inside, Dr. Mira Callan worked tirelessly, stitching wounds with hands that never seemed to tremble. She was slender, dark-haired, eyes steady even in exhaustion. Elias had spoken few words to her, yet something in her calm presence held him when the chaos threatened to unravel him. She had been there when they cut him free, her gaze meeting his across the firelit dust, not pitying, not afraid, only seeing. "Your stitches are sloppy," she said one evening, catching him wrapping his ribs with duct tape. He grinned, winced, and replied, "Duct tape fixes everything. Even me." She arched a brow. "Someday I'd like to meet this mythical duct tape you humans worship. You'll have to fight the universe for it," Elias said, settling onto the cot she shoved at him. He pretended to sleep while she worked, her hands brushing his skin lightly, like she feared he'd vanish if touched too hard. For a time, peace pretended to exist. Families rebuilt, laughter returned in cautious fragments, and broadcasts of Elias's defiance rippled across colonies, sparking small rebellions. Yet beneath it all, the storm brewed. The Vathrians had lost a battle, not the war. Their fleets were regrouping, gathering like thunderheads on the rim of known space. Spies whispered of a retaliatory purge. No mercy, no prisoners. The tribunal would not forgive humiliation. Elias knew the countdown had only begun. One night, as firelight painted the settlement in amber glow, the survivors gathered. A council formed. Miners, farmers, engineers, and a few scarred soldiers who had refused to lay down arms. They argued about evacuation, defense, alliances. Fear shaped their words. "They'll come with fleets larger than the sky itself," one farmer shouted. "We have no chance." "We survived once," Mira countered. Her voice, though tired, carried iron. "We survived because we refused to bow. We will again." Elias listened, silent until they turned to him, demanding prophecy from their reluctant symbol. He shifted, leaning on the cane Mira had forced him to use, and finally said, "You don't beat an empire head-on. You bleed it. Mock it. Break its stories until even its own soldiers stop believing. The Vathrians lost because the galaxy saw them fail to kill one bound man. That's a wound they'll never close." The room quieted. Hope flickered, fragile but alive. But hope was tested soon. 3 days later, the sky darkened again. Not with fleets, but with a single ship, sleek and terrible, carrying emissaries of the tribunal. They landed outside the settlement, demanding the human who had humiliated them. Elias walked out alone, against Myra's protests, his rifle slung though he barely had strength to aim. The emissaries, robed in obsidian, stepped forward with voices sharp as knives. "Humankind," one hissed, "your defiance has destabilized sectors. Surrender yourself, and we will spare this settlement." Behind him, the town held its breath. Children peered from windows. Farmers clutched tools like weapons. Myra's hands clenched white around her medkit. Elias saw their eyes, saw the weight of trust he had never sought but could not deny. He spat blood into the dust. "You want me?" He spread his arms wide. "Come and take me. Just know Earth's got this little thing called reality TV. Once the whole galaxy's seen your failure, reruns are forever." Confusion flickered in alien eyes. They did not understand the cruelty of a meme. The emissary raised a weapon. Tension shattered into chaos. Shots rang out, townsfolk scattered, and Elias hurled himself behind wreckage, firing with cracked ribs, screaming. The Marines fought beside farmers, children threw stones, and Mira dragged the wounded to safety with no regard for her own life. The battle raged, brutal and fast. Elias moved like a storm, every bullet a curse, every breath a rebellion. But he was only one man, and the Vathrians pressed hard. At last, as smoke blinded him, he saw Mira cornered, an alien soldier's blade raised above her. He didn't think. He charged, slamming his broken body between her and death. The blade tore across his shoulder, fire lancing down his arm. Yet he held the alien's wrist and growled through clenched teeth, "Not today." He drove his knee into the creature, stole its weapon, and cut it down with feral rage. The town rose with him. Fury spread like wildfire. Farmers wielded plows like halberds. Miners swung drills. Children screamed battle cries they had learned from vids of Earth's ancient wars. The emissaries faltered, overwhelmed not by numbers, but by sheer, unrelenting defiance. Humanity's curse, the refusal to stop fighting even when common sense begged surrender. At last, the survivors drove the Vathrians back to their ship. Flames scarred the ground. Smoke choked the air, but the settlement still stood. Elias collapsed to his knees, vision swimming, Myra's hands pressing against his wounds, her face pale with fear and anger. "You're going to die if you keep doing this," she whispered fiercely. "Maybe," he rasped, blood staining his grin, "but dying's not the worst thing. Giving up is." The ship fled, shame trailing like smoke. The people cheered weakly, exhausted but unbroken. The galaxy would hear of this too, how one soldier, already legend, had turned a backwater town into warriors. Later, as Elias lay in the clinic, Mira at his side, he finally let his guard drop. Her hand rested over his, steady, anchoring. No declarations passed between them, but in the quiet, something stronger than words settled, a bond woven of survival, respect, and the stubborn grace of choosing to live despite the odds. And if you're listening now, wondering what courage truly is, remember this. It is not absence of fear, nor victory in every battle. Courage is the quiet act of standing again and again, so that others may believe they too can rise. It is a torch passed from scarred hands to trembling ones, lighting the way forward. Courage, like hope, is contagious, and always begins with someone daring to refuse the silence. The galaxy had not forgotten humiliation. Empires rarely do. When the Vathrians returned, they did not arrive with emissaries or threats. They came with an armada so vast it blotted out the stars. The people of New Arcadia stared upward in horrified silence, watching the sky fracture with the arrival of ships whose shadows stretched across continents. This was not intimidation. It was extermination. Elias Kane stood at the settlement's edge, rifle slung over his battered shoulder, Mira beside him with her medkit strapped tight. Around them, survivors fortified barricades, farmers turned engineers wired explosives, and children carried messages with a seriousness that belied their age. Every face reflected the same truth. They would not run. Not again, Mira whispered. They'll burn everything. There's no way we hold against that. Elias smirked, though exhaustion lined his features like carved stone. Then we make them choke on it. Empires hate losing more than they love winning. Let's give them a loss they'll never bury. A hush settled as the first strike screamed through the atmosphere, fire raining across the plains. The settlement trembled. People scattered to shelters, weapons primed, eyes wide but steady. This was no longer a battle for survival. It was a battle for dignity, the kind that echoes for centuries. The rising chaos pressed harder than any siege before. Bombardments shattered fields, mechs descended like armored titans, and drones swarmed in clouds that blotted out the moon. Elias led squads through collapsing streets, his voice cutting through fear with commands sharp as flint. Mira dragged the wounded into basements, her hands soaked in blood that never dried. She stitched, bandaged, whispered encouragement, never faltering even as the walls cracked around her. "Where's the duct tape?" One miner gasped through broken ribs, half delirious. Mira cursed under her breath, but smiled despite herself. Elias tossed a roll at the man and growled. "See? Even the galaxy knows duct tape's holy." The joke sparked laughter, shaky but real, and for a moment the fear bent beneath it. Hours blurred into a relentless storm. Every strike, every casualty pulled Elias closer to the brink. His body screamed rebellion with each step, his wounds a chorus of pain. Yet he refused to rest, refused to falter because the people were watching, because Mira was watching, and because somewhere, deep in his marrow, he believed that as long as one human still stood, the galaxy had no right to claim victory. The climax came not with fire from the sky, but with a voice that cut through the chaos. The High Warden himself, descending in a towering command ship, his image broadcast to every world once more. The same alien who had raised a blade over Elias months ago now glared with venom. This defiance ends tonight. Humanity dies with you, Cain. The challenge was clear. Elias looked at Mira, her face pale with exhaustion, but her eyes burning. If I fall, he began. She silenced him with a sharp look. You don't fall. Not now. Not ever. He chuckled, though it hurt. Guess I'll need more duct tape. The battle surged toward its zenith. Elias fought through waves of soldiers, his rifle singing until ammunition ran dry, then with stolen blades, fists, and sheer stubborn will. Each step forward was a miracle, each breath a rebellion. Finally, he reached the heart of the field where the Warden's armored form towered above. The duel was brutal. Alien strength against human resilience, precision against raw defiance. Elias's body faltered, but his spirit refused. He drove himself forward, every strike fueled by memories of his fallen squad, of children whispering 8 minutes, of Myra's steady hands pulling him back from the edge. The Warden sneered, mocking his weakness, but Elias spat blood and grinned. You should have stayed off live broadcast, he rasped, and with a final surge, he drove the alien's own blade into its chest. The Warden collapsed, silence rippling across the battlefield, the broadcast capturing every detail. The fall of a tyrant at the hands of one stubborn soldier who refused to die quietly. The Vathrian forces broke. Discipline shattered. Their fleet, once united, scattered in disarray as human ships and ground fighters pressed with renewed fury. Victory did not come easily, nor cleanly, but it came. Smoke lifted from broken mechs, drones fell like metal rain, and the armada retreated beyond the stars. In the aftermath, the people wept, not with despair but with awe. They had survived the impossible once more, and the galaxy had witnessed it. Already whispers spread. If one soldier could fell their Warden, what chance does the Empire truly have? Elias collapsed into Myra's arms, his breath ragged, his body torn nearly past repair. She held him as though she could anchor him to the earth itself. You're not allowed to die, she whispered fiercely. He smirked through bloodied lips. Who'd make the jokes then? In the weeks that followed, New Arcadia became legend. Songs were sung of the ghillie-clad soldier who mocked death, of the medic who stitched hope with her hands, of a town that defied extinction. Across alien worlds, rebellion sparked. The phrase 8 minutes became not just a memory, but a rallying cry. Elias never claimed command, never sought glory. He returned to the people, helping rebuild fields, carrying stones, planting seeds beside Mira in quiet mornings. Their bond grew in silence, in glances exchanged over soil and sweat, in hands brushing as they passed tools. It was not a fiery romance, but something stronger, forged in survival and shared defiance. Years later, when peace settled like fragile snow, a statue was raised in New Arcadia Square. It did not depict Elias striking down the Warden or standing victorious over fleets. It showed him bound in his ghillie suit, smirking against death, because that was the moment that mattered, the defiance that had lit a fire in the galaxy's heart. The plaque beneath bore only 2 words, 8 minutes. And if you carry this story with you, remember, greatness is not found in crowns or empires, nor in victories written in blood. It is found in the stubborn spark that refuses to bow, in a laughter that cracks despair, in the quiet grace of standing for others when your body begs to fall. Never underestimate what you can ignite, for sometimes all it takes is a single act of defiance to burn away the darkness of a universe.